In this episode, we're talking all about how to use reality shifting to create powerful messaging. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. All right, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Again, every time we do an episode about messaging, I'm always going to start it with like, oh, this is going to be such a good episode, one of my favorite episodes. And this episode is really about messaging. But what we're going to talk about is the foundation of messaging. And this is going to be something I haven't really talked about. Like maybe if you've been in the Video 4X program, you've gone through it, you might have a little bit of an idea of what we're going to kind of talk about today, because the first whole module of our program talks about what reality is and how reality is created and how we can use this in our own life. And when we use this in our own life, you then get the knowing of it. And so if you guys have been listening to any of the past episodes, you know there's a massive difference between knowledge and knowing. So knowledge is basically you read a book on how to ride a bike, you're not going to be left with knowing how to ride a bike. But actually going out and doing it and riding the bike, you get the knowing, you have the feeling of it, you know how to balance on it. And that just really, the only way to truly learn is by doing it. So when you guys take the concepts I'm going to give you guys today, and when we actually have it in the first part of the Video 4X program, when you understand how to use this idea of what reality is to improve your own life, better your own life, create internal freedom, create better interpretations and all of that stuff, you then get to use it with your audience, with content and with messaging. And a lot of people, like the fastest growing entrepreneurs, are all doing exactly what we're going to talk about today, whether they know it or not. Like a lot of them might not even know they're doing it. And you guys will hear me reference Gary Vaynerchuk a lot. Gary Vaynerchuk actually does a really good job of this. He may not know that he's doing a really good job of this. A lot of the top entrepreneurs out there may not know this is exactly what they're doing, but they are. And if you're not growing, you're struggling with your content, you're growing with your messaging, you can't seem to get transformations to your clients or anything like along those lines, can't stand out, you're probably not tapping into what we're talking about today. And so what we're going to talk about today is really what reality is, how to shift reality, and how to use that in marketing and content. Because the problem is right now, a lot of people hear, there's a lot of noise. Like there's just so many, there's podcasts like mine. There's tons of content. Like social media is blowing up. There's more social media platforms. TikTok is taking off. Like there's just so much noise out there. And the problem is there's so much advice on how to grow. And a lot of that stems from because people will, like you get these content gurus, quote unquote content gurus, who've gone and they've grown their business doing a certain type of content, a certain type of marketing. And they go, okay, and they're looking at it from a very surface level standpoint. They're going like, okay, great. This is what I did. I'm going to teach it. And then they teach it to someone else and someone else goes and does it, when they're not getting down to the deep layers of what actually happened to cause the growth. So for example, I'll give you guys a great example of this. We hear all the time, vulnerability is what is going to grow your audience. Like be vulnerable, be authentic, be vulnerable, be authentic. Well, it's not vulnerability or being authentic that's actually what made the content successful or what grew the brand. It's what being vulnerable released. It's what it exposed and what now people are connecting on that actually caused the growth. So for example, if I was very vulnerable with you guys, and I talk about like, you know, how I was $40,000 in debt, how I used to live with my in-laws, different things like that. That's me being vulnerable, me being authentic because it's real and it's true. But what that does is it plays into the identity of the entrepreneur. So I'm talking about my entrepreneurial journey. Now, if I was authentic to you about like, you know, a fight I got into with my wife and I was vulnerable, you're not going to connect on that because my audience is business owners, and the whole podcast is about entrepreneurship. So just being vulnerable isn't going to automatically mean you're going to grow. It doesn't automatically mean you're going to be successful. But you see so many people who were vulnerable in one thing, and then they get not confused, but they get they fall victim to the illusion that vulnerability is what actually caused the growth or the connection when it was what the vulnerability exposed. So what happens is we have a lot of content gurus teaching things that they've done without actually understanding the deep layers of what was happening that caused the result that they got. Now, the problem with that is it leaves a lot of entrepreneurs like you guys in a place of doing it over and 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 over again and not getting the results that you want because you're not actually tapping into what actually was really working. So some of the problems that we have and we see all the time is, one, people tell you vulnerability and being authentic means you're going to grow your audience. And yes, it is if you're exposing the right things. And we'll talk about this in this episode, but exposing things like identity. So if I expose to you guys who's authentic about being a parent and an entrepreneur, who do you think I'm going to attract with that vulnerability? I'm going to attract parents and entrepreneurs because of the shared identity in that vulnerability. Another thing we hear all the time is like how-to educational content is going to make you grow your audience. And that's how we add value. And yes, that's true. And it might have been like really true 10 years ago. But now what's happening is we get, 10 experts or more, sometimes even hundreds of experts in a certain niche, going after a certain avatar, and they're all teaching the exact same thing. We're not the only ones with our skills in Zone of Genius. So what happens is now we start to blend in. We'll talk more about that in the future, or not in the future, but in this episode. Another one that we hear all the time is like, you should survey your audience. And there's just a lot of them, right? So the problem with content right now is that we're kind of entering, let's just say there's 5 levels of market sophistication. We always want to be kind of at level number 5. Level number 1 means you're the first one to a marketplace. So you're going to see success. Like you're the first coffee shop and the only coffee shop in a certain town. So you see success. You're the only online expert talking about YouTube marketing. You're going to see success. And it's true in any niche. You could be the only bakery, the only restaurant, the only whatever. That's level number 1. Now, what starts to happen is competition comes in, you start to move up the different levels. Now, level 2 means you're starting to blend in. You have a few competitors. Level 3 is like you're totally, really just blended in. You're just the same as everyone else. There's nothing differentiating. And that's where you don't want to be. Level 5 means you're so unique and so different that you're the only one in your space. Like if you look at what we do inside of our company and the way we look at messaging, and we have the Video 4X methodology, no one else can teach the Video 4X methodology. No one teaches what we do. No one talks about our frameworks, our philosophy. In fact, most people with content will never get underneath the deeper layer. And so right now we're in the 5th level of market sophistication. We're like the only one who knows it and understands it at this level. We're the only one with this specific methodology. So we stand out because of it. This is how we thrive. This is how we've grown so fast. And again, I would do this in any business, whether it's a local business, whether it's an online business. And we've talked about this in a past podcast, but if I was to start a coffee shop, an idea would be to start one centered around parents. Like there's no coffee shops catered to just parents. That would be the 5th level of market sophistication. So a lot of people won't adapt. A lot of people's businesses die because they don't adapt. They don't differentiate themselves. They don't stand out. And that's what messaging is all about. That's what messaging allows you to do. But when we look at messaging as a reality shifting tool. And this is why we stand out so fast. This is why we're able to shift perspectives. This is why we're able to blow people's minds. This is why we're able to talk about things that people have never heard. Is because I understand how humans form reality. Or I guess a better way to say this is I have a version of understanding reality in a way that makes messaging really effective, because I'm pretty sure my version of how reality is created is just like baby steps of a million steps. But I want to talk about that. I want to talk to you guys about how you guys can use your messaging and marketing to shift the reality of your space. And the reason why this is so important is because if you're a business that's trying to offer a better service, you're trying to improve someone's life, you have a deeper purpose behind your business, which I personally believe every business should have a deeper purpose. This is what allows us to connect with our audience. This is what starts to happen, is when you start to tap into all this stuff, you start to shift people's reality, your audience's reality. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, because messaging can fix all those content problems. So if you're having a problem with being consistent, putting out a ton of content, not getting any traction, you aren't even clear on what you want to talk about, you're serving your audience, you're not in alignment, meaning that like you're not excited to really talk about what you're going to talk about, you don't know what to talk about, what I'm going to share with you guys will start to fix all of that. Understanding how humans form reality will allow you to take an audience and move them to a better place of being. And this is what I'm all about. Like my goal, my deeper purpose in teaching you guys this in the video 4X and our methodologies is about how you can go into your space, stand out, shift the reality of that space to make it better, to end suffering, to get rid of society norms that are either irrelevant, outdated, or don't really make any sense or are causing some kind of suffering. Okay, so for example, like right now, one of the things that we do to shift reality for people is that how-to content isn't the best way to add value or the only way. And that's been an industry norm inside of the online marketing space for a really long time. How-to content, educational content is the only way to add value. And that was true at one time, but that's an industry norm where like the new people coming into online marketing will come in and they're going to hear that from like 20 different gurus, like over and over and over again, because that's the way it used to be. And that's the way it always has been, but it's not. What's happening is they're all blending in. They're all staying at that like third level of market sophistication where, you know, the gurus came in at level 1. They were the first ones to a space. Yes, how-to educational content by itself did allow people to stand out. But then now we have 20, 40, 50, 100 different experts all talking about the same thing. Your messaging blends in because you're relatively saying the same thing as everyone else. So what we're doing is we're trying to shift the reality of the online marketing space to get them to realize there's a better way, there's a new way, there's stuff that's deeper that's going on. And that puts us in the 5th level of market sophistication. So let's talk about what reality is. Now, again, this is probably going to be a baby version of how humans create reality. I don't know. Well, I guess the right way to say this is I know nothing and I know everything at the same time. I know everything that I need to know in order to get certain types of results. But for me, everything's a constant evolution. So no matter where you are in your evolution of understanding reality, I want you, when you're creating messaging and you're creating marketing, to come at it from this version that I'm about to give you. Now, this version that I'm about to give you can be used in your own life to shift the reality of things that cause suffering, that cause pain, that cause internal struggle. And I encourage you to use it because if you understand how to do it for yourself, you're going to understand how to go into your marketplace and do it at such a higher level. So here we go. Step number 1 of understanding where reality is formed is we have to understand that reality is 100% individualized, meaning that no two people on this planet will have 100% the same reality and existence in their mind. Reality is generally created in our mind without us even knowing it. So basically what happens in life, and this happens every waking minute, there's things happening all the time, right? There's events. So if you're watching the video, I have a cup in my hand. I'm putting the cup down and I'm putting it down on my pad of paper. Now, if we had 100 people in this room watching me do that, so let's just say there's a big circle going on. They watch me put the cup down on the pad of paper and I start talking to my cup and I say the words, "Cup, I love you." Now, there's going to be interpretations of that. People are going to look at that and go, "That was weird." Brandon is a freak. Why is he talking to a mug? Other people might look at that and go like, "Wow, Brandon's filled with so much love. He's even talking to his mugs." Some people might look at it and have a different interpretation. But the point is there's going to be 100 people that are leaving with an interpretation that their mind created without them realizing it. So it just happens. They didn't think about, how am I going to think about this? They just think. It's automatically in their head. Boom, it's there. And then they leave. They leave that event, and every single one of them is going to think that thought that just popped into their head, that interpretation they had, is real. It's reality, but it's only individualized to them. So that's why people get in arguments. It's because you have a conflict of different realities. Someone might go and, you try Facebook ads 5 times and they fail, and someone might use Facebook ads all the time and succeed. They're going to get in a room and they're going to argue over whether or not Facebook ads actually work. No one's right, no one's wrong. They just have different experiences that created a different version of reality in their head. So what we have is a conflict of realities. Someone's had success with Facebook ads, the other person didn't. But no one ever takes the time to say like, is this really true? Is this not true? It's just something that's subconsciously created in our head, and we just live our entire life that way. So what we have to do is we have to look at, individually, first of all, how do we use this in our life? And the very first thing is like, is there something that bothers you? Do you feel like there's emotional stress or strain or something along those? And we have to, along those lines, and you have to look at what's the interpretation or what's the perspective that I used or am living my life through. What's the lens in which I saw this? And can I actually change and give it a new lens? Now, if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know the scenario that I use, which is when I started my business, I would go to my parents' house and my mom every day would tell me, do you want to go get a job? Do you want to go get a job? You should go get a job. You shouldn't do this business thing. And I looked at it as my mom didn't support me and my mom is controlling. That was literally my reality. Every day it was like, my mom, this, and it caused a lot of emotional stress and discomfort and suffering in my life. Then I went to a 3-day little conference thing, Landmark Forum. A lot of you guys may have been to it. If not, I highly encourage you to go to it. It was life-changing for me. But then I started to realize, wow, that was just the lens I was looking at it through. What lens can I now look at it through that's going to end the suffering? And what I chose to look at now was my mom was trying to protect her child in the best way that she knew how. And that was a much more loving and beneficial way to be living my life. And I ended that suffering. And this is what we can do with messaging as well. When you understand this concept that reality is individualized 100%, you start to realize that you can actually shift people's reality. So if someone knew the tools and had the messaging and had the marketing to be able to create a video that was specific to that scenario, that got me to realize, oh my gosh, my mom isn't controlling. My mom does believe in me. That would have been transformational. And when you start to understand this, your messaging starts to become a lot more powerful. You start to see how to move your industry, how to change your industry, how to shift the reality of your audience. And what I call this is perspective shifting. And you'll see it on our cup, like our Video 4X cup. I'm a perspective shifting badass. But there's tools and ways that we can do this. Now, the first step of understanding how to do this is we have to understand what a belief box is. And what I call a belief box is basically identifying the things that are causing the most suffering in our life or the things that are blocking the success inside of our business. So first look at yourself, like what beliefs do you have? Is it webinars don't work? Is it I can't do this? Is it that Facebook ads don't work? Is it that I don't have enough money? Because all of those are just beliefs. And what starts to happen is we start to have experiences like we do a webinar 5 times and it doesn't work. So that's like one wall of the belief box. Then we're told by our parents that success means going to school and getting a job. And when we try to start a business, we're now in this bind because we're going against what our parents told us was real and what we kind of still think is real, but we don't want to do it anyways. We want to be successful in other ways. Maybe we try a webinar 5 times or Facebook ads 5 times. They don't work. And by the time you know it, you have all these beliefs that you're trapped inside of. And when you understand this concept, you start to break down these beliefs and these walls and stuff, and you get to these really freeing experiences. Now, this is step number 1. If you can identify these inside of your space, these are what we're going to call mostly limiting beliefs. We're going to look at limiting beliefs as the first place that if you want to create really powerful messaging, you want to start shifting people's perspective, you want to shift people's reality, you start with limiting beliefs. The problem with only staying with limiting beliefs is that they're still going to be a little bit individualized. So for example, one of the ones we go after inside of our space is you're not afraid of the camera. A lot of people go, I'm afraid of the camera. Now, the problem with only staying with limiting beliefs and focusing on discrediting limiting beliefs and tackling those is that they're subjective. They still are subjective, where 60% of my audience may have that fear, but that means 40% of them aren't going to be paying attention to that video because it's not relevant to them. What we really want to look at is what beliefs are so ingrained and so indoctrinated into our industry, into our space, into our niche, that people literally think this is the only way to do something because this is the way that it's always been. This is what I call an industry norm. If you want to start forming really powerful messaging that shifts reality, look at the industry norms in your space that are causing problems. If you can do this, you're going to see massive growth in the engagement, in sales, in all of your marketing. Now, one of the ways this happens is that yes, every human being has an individualized version of reality. But there's going to be certain aspects of that reality that are the same as other people. This is how movements start. This is how trends start. This is how ideologies start, all of that stuff. So what starts to happen inside of a space is you get shared versions of parts of reality that people can rally behind. So inside of our space, the internet marketing space, what's starting to happen, or what did happen, was a lot of people were seeing success with how-to educational content, finding popular keywords. They were surveying their audience, and they saw really good success with it. So they started teaching it and teaching it and teaching it to more people. And then you had thousands of people who've consumed this content, even though they all have 1,000 different versions of reality. Nothing's going to line up 100%. Certain aspects of those thousands of people's reality was how-to content is how you grow an audience and add value. So that starts to become the norm. And more people rally behind it. Now, human behavior is when enough people are rallying behind something or telling something, and you hear it over and over and over, you don't even question it. And what I want you to do is question it. Question the things that are normal, especially if you want to be the person who's thriving and growing and changing the space. One of the things I look at, and I really do look at my team, is like more than a team. It's kind of like, I don't know what the right word would be, but it's almost kind of like, not an army, but like they're my team that I go to war with against this industry norm. Like I literally want to change the space. I want people to question what is normal. I want people to go and improve their space. And we're going against the grain. We're changing the norms of what are inside of our space. And it all stems from this. We've recognized, okay, great. We understand that there's a shared version of reality, which is how-to content. Now, the reason why it's so important to frame it this way is because if there is a belief or there is a version of reality, you can actually shift that person's reality. Because remember, it's not real. It's a perceived version of realness, or it's basically just an illusion that they think is real. The idea of questioning it has not even entered their head yet. Like most people coming into the space becomes part of the reality, but we already know that's not part of reality. So what we start to do is we start using what I call thought reversals. Thought reversals get you to identify the belief that is causing suffering inside of a space. So if we look at my space, not the old social media site, but like the space that we're in right now, how-to content is the way to grow an audience. That's the belief. That's the industry norm. That's what most people come into space. They don't even question it. Their version of reality is how-to content is the best way to do that. Now, what I'm going to use is the counterexample, Gary Vaynerchuk. And I say, well, if how-to content isn't if how-to content is the best way to grow an audience and to add value, then why and how did Gary Vaynerchuk grow his audience without doing 100% traditional how-to content? In fact, most of his content up until lately, like when he grew his audience, like when the first couple of years growing his audience, there was almost zero how-to content. So what I just did is I identified what the belief was. What's the version of reality that most people are living their life by that's actually causing suffering inside of my space? Oh, it's how-to content. You have all these people listening to all these gurus, and they literally believe it's real. They don't question it. In their mind, it's real. It's their version of reality. But again, we can shift reality. And all I have to do is identify that belief that they have. And in this case, all I need to do is find a counterexample that everyone knows that shatters that belief. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to stand out. It allows me to alter their reality. It allows me to shift their reality into a place that doesn't have that suffering that they were experiencing from doing how-to content over and over and over again and getting no traction. And this is why this stuff is so powerful, because when you can understand that virtually every single thought that you have isn't real, but you think it is, and that it can be shifted, and you can do it for yourself, you can easily start to do it for your audience. You can easily start to do it in your space. And this is how thought leaders are born. Look at any thought leader out there, and I challenge you guys, go look at any thought leader out there right now. And Tony Robbins is a great example. Everyone goes, oh, Tony Robbins gives such great, he like causes so much transformation, and he's such like he's such a thought leader, and he's such a good coach, and all of this stuff. All he's doing is identifying the individual that he's working with. He finds their belief that's causing the suffering, and he just begins to ask questions that discredit that belief. He's reality shifting. He's shifting their reality. And when I look at our messaging and I look at our content and I look at our marketing, what we're doing is we're shifting people's reality through the entire sales funnel. What is the top of funnel content that's going to be polarizing, stand out, give these small little shifts? How can I pull them through the sales mechanism, our webinar, our video series? What's the resistance I'm going to get? What are the beliefs that need to be discredited? And when you start to have these types of questions enter your mind, you start to realize from a 30,000 foot view looking down, you start to realize, oh my gosh, 70% of the people going through my sales funnel are all going to have these same beliefs that cause them to either not want to listen to me, not want to buy from me, not want to continue with this. And when you understand those, you start to craft messaging and language and communication that gets rid of those versions of reality that cause the resistance of them going down your sales funnel or buying your product. Now, the disclaimer here is, can this stuff be used unethically? 100%. Are there people that use this unethically? 100%. There always are. But what I want to do is to give people, and this is why the Video Forex program is so special to me, is give these tools to the people who want to use them for good. Because there's so many people that have the tools and use them for bad. If you have a program or you have a company or you have a service or a product that's going to improve someone's life, it is your duty to learn how to do this so that we can rally up and start shifting people's reality and improve the consciousness of this planet. That's really, my goal here. And to allow for the new generation to come up where they know, okay, great, there's a lot of different ways to do things. I can follow my passion. I don't have to go to school unless I want to. Everything is okay. Everything's a belief, and they live in a lot happier life. So there's a lot of ways to do this. Let's talk a little bit more about how to actually do this. So we talked about one concept called thought reversal. Thought reversal is identifying a belief that people have. And I really encourage you guys to stick with limiting beliefs that you might identify inside of your space and industry norms. Industry norms are like the place that I would really begin looking at. And this applies to even local businesses as well. So there's a lot of beliefs that your audience may have. Let's use an actual example. So like car mechanics. What's the one belief that people have about car mechanics all the time? And that for me, at least the one I hear all the time, is that they're always there to rip me off. Like there's probably very few people that get a quote from a car mechanic and automatically go, this is the best deal. They're being 100% honest. I would say most people actually have that thing in their mind. Am I getting screwed over? Am I, whatever. If I was a car mechanic and I knew that was one of the beliefs and I thought reversaled that in my upfront content and talked about how they're not all out there to take money from you or take advantage of you, and I accurately identified the belief, I shifted the reality of that belief, who do you think they're going to go to? They're not going to go to the person who's advertising, talking about their service and saying, we give the best quality work. They're going to the person who just undid the belief that mechanics are out to get my money or out to rob me. And so you can use this in any niche. It doesn't matter what niche. So thought reversals are the first one. And I'll quickly go through a thought reversal formula. Basically, if you're going to do a video, you want to start with the belief that is causing the suffering and just say that the belief is old, bad, or not the best way. The next thing is you want to take a step back. If we're going to attack someone's belief, we have to understand the guards are going to go up. We're attacking the reality. We're trying to shift the reality. There's going to be resistance there. So we want to take a step back, but then we go into the discredit. And so there's a ton of ways to discredit this. Like I love using counterexamples and metaphors and chunking up. I'll give you guys a couple examples here in a second, but then we move right into the better way, the new way. So for example, if I identified that most people think how-to content is the best way to grow an audience, I would say thinking that how-to content is the best way to grow an audience is the worst advice you could possibly have. I'm polarizing, so I'm standing out. Then I go into the compassion piece and I would say something along the lines of, I understand why you think that. Every guru and their mom is telling you to go do endless amounts of how-to content. And then I go into the discredit. But let me ask you, how did Gary Vaynerchuk grow so fast without using endless amounts of how-to content? if he grew faster than anyone ever has and probably ever will without it, don't you think it would be more beneficial to focus on what he's doing? And people go, oh my gosh, yes. Well, then I move into the solution. So what did Gary Vaynerchuk do? Well, he focuses on identity, beliefs, and thought reversals. How do you do thought reversals? Well, let me tell you. And now I go into my content and I give the new solution, because now I discredited the belief. I shifted their reality. They're an open playing field to take on a new reality at that point. So I'll give you one more example. And the way I discredited that was using a counterexample. Counterexample is an example that everyone almost knows that will prove that the belief is wrong. So another one is chunking up. So the belief is that we hear all the time, working hard guarantees success. So I would say thinking you have to work hard in order to be successful, some of the worst advice you can possibly get. I understand why you think that, because everyone and their mom's saying you have to work until your eyeballs bleed. But let me ask you, does every person who worked hard become successful? No. So what I did is I chunked up. I took the belief, I took their version of reality, and I asked, is this true all the time? Does every person who believe this get that result? And if you're truly going after a belief, that will almost always never be 100% true. And so when I talk to our students and we go through the Video Forex program, I basically say the easiest way to identify a belief is if something isn't true 100% of the time, we're going to identify that as a belief when it comes to messaging and marketing. Because the chunking up framework allows us to say, is this true 100% of the time? We'll give you guys one more example. So if we wanted to use like a metaphor or an analogy, and I actually used a metaphor and analogy in a previous episode. I started talking about fear and how fear is an illusion. And I started talking about this stuff, and I used the car with gasoline, how some people would see gasoline going into a car and 20 gallons of gasoline, and then they get the key. I'll just give this whole, in case you didn't listen to that episode, I'll just go through it again. I basically said what most people do in their life is they let fear control their life. Instead of going straight from point A to point Z, they go from point A all the way to the right, all the way to the left, because they let their fears dictate their actions. So then I gave the metaphor to back it up. And the metaphor basically was, imagine when cars just came out and someone said, hey, I'm going to pour 20 gallons of gasoline into this metal tank of this vehicle that you're going to drive. You're going to stick the key in and you're going to turn it, and it's actually going to cause sparks in the engine where all the gasoline is going to go to as well. And you're going to have these combustions, like these small little explosions inside the motor that's going to make it go. You can be like, no way am I getting in that car, because you let the fear control your actions. But the person who says, yes, I'm going to go do that, gets in the car and they go straight from point A to point Z. And they get the results in 5 minutes, while the other person's fumbling around, maybe riding a horse, and it takes them a month to get to their spot. So what I did there to accurately describe something or to prove something or to discredit a belief is you just use a metaphor. So you identify a belief, you say that it's wrong, it's bad, it's the old way, and you just go into the compassion piece and then just use your metaphor to back it up. You know, that belief is like saying X, Y, and Z and X, Y, and Z. So those are 3 ways that you can discredit a belief. Now there's other ways to shift people's reality. So thought reversal is just one. I'm going to give you guys one more before we wrap up this episode. One more way that we can start to shift people's reality and pull people in is by understanding and using identity. Identity is another type of reality shifting. Basically, when it comes down to it, we're all just human. But you ask me, I'm going to say, okay, yeah, I'm a parent. I'm also I love mountain biking, so I'm a mountain biker. I'm an entrepreneur, and I hold on to those beliefs. It literally becomes part of my reality. Like, I'm a mountain biker, and I'm a father, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I hold on to those really strong beliefs. Like those are the beliefs that I have. Like, that's who I am. I believe that to be true. But what's really funny is I'm a lot more than that. I'm also very stubborn. I'm also very emotional. I can also be a big pain in the ass. Just ask my team, especially Taylor. But I can also be, inspiring. I could be a good leader, but I have a lot of good and bad traits. But what's interesting is those never really enter my version of reality. The strongest identities are the ones that I basically live like 90% of my life by. 90% of my reality that I live on a daily basis is like my top 5 core identities. Now, if you understand that, you can start to use that in your content, your messaging to literally pull in exactly who you want. So if you're the type of person who's like, oh, my content isn't bringing the right people, my audience sucks. They don't get my message. They never have any money. They never want to invest. They don't understand that. The problem is you have a messaging problem. You're not using identity. Like if I wanted to attract parent entrepreneurs, all I need to do, put in my video titles, is parents make the best entrepreneurs. Just incorporate those two identities in there. So when you understand how beliefs are formed, how reality is kind of formed, you can start to use it yourself. You can start to thought reversal your audience to get them to see a new perspective. So you start to shift their reality. This is where thought leadership starts to be born. Then what you do is you go, great, I shifted my entire space and I got them to see something in a different way, but I don't want to work with my entire space. I just want to work with people that have the same identities and values as me. Well, guess what? At this point, all you need to do is incorporate your values and your identities into the content topics, into your copy. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to start to become the thought leader in a very quick way to the people that you want to work with. And it all stems from reality shifting people's version of reality. And again, just to wrap this up, the way that I look at reality is that reality is individualized 100% of the time. Like everyone has a 100% individualized version of reality. But if we can identify the areas of shared versions of reality and reveal how that's causing suffering in people's lives with your messaging, your content, you quickly become a thought leader. So if you guys want more info on this, if you guys want to learn how to do thought reversals, we definitely have training and all of that good stuff on it. What I would do is look in the show notes of this podcast on our website, or just even email support@soldthevideo and we can get you a link to learn more about thought reversals and all of that stuff. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, you want to hear more episodes like this, I would love a review on iTunes. So head over to iTunes, give us a review on there. The more reviews, the more positive reviews we get, the more traction we get, and the more traction we get, the more we get to give to you guys. So head over there, leave us a review, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.